Previously on Unscripted.
So an AI could play Tetris?
Apparently. Just like an AI could play chess, right? I guess.
But like Tetris it's not just a mental game, there's a dexterity involved. It's a hand-eye coordination aspect. An AI doesn't even have a hand or an eye.
You're listening to Unscripted with Skip Sherman and Josh Obadia.
Okay, Skip. So today we're going to talk about Only Murders in the Building Season 3. But before we get to that, it's NFL football playoff time, and I've been watching some of the playoff games. I don't know if you watched the Buffalo-Kansas City game last week.
Well, you know I watch all the games.
Right. So that was actually a really good game, and I was in Florida, and I recorded the game, and I was able to not find out the score and watch it later.
That's impressive.
It is. But I don't even want to talk. I mean, we could talk about the game, but that's not what I'm bringing up the topic for. So I've never actually done this, recorded a football game and watched it later. I don't know if you've ever done that.
I've done it like once, but I don't like it because I know it's recorded. It's like a different feeling. I can't even explain it. I didn't enjoy watching the game when I recorded it. I just had the urge to fast forward, so it is like a bit weird. And also, I mean, it's hard to not find out the score if you are doing that,
Right. Well, I didn't find out the score, and you know how I've always said that football games are far too long. There's too many timeouts. There's too many commercials. Yeah. And also the play clock is 40 seconds, which is way too long. Like I've said this many times.
Mm-hmm.
So I was watching the game and I was fast forwarding. So I think I was able to watch the whole thing in about an hour, and I could have probably done it. I could have done it in less than an hour if I really wanted to. There were some parts where I didn't fast forward. But the interesting thing is this. The play clock is 40 seconds, and you know that a team, they can run a play really whenever they want. They can wait 10 seconds or 20 or 25. Like, it doesn't matter. But there's a button on the remote control, which I'm pretty sure was invented for people who watch sports, that you can fast forward 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's the perfect amount of time to fast forward. Sometimes it's too little, sometimes it's too much. But I have to tell you, I use that 30-second button every time, and every single time the play had not started yet. Yeah. Meaning that they never snap the ball in under 30 seconds. Never.
The only time they will snap the ball under 30 seconds is if they're in their hurry up. So like usually the last minute of the half or the last minute of the game. But that didn't happen because in that particular game, Buffalo wasn't in a hurry to try to score. They were actually trying to not leave any time left, because they know from history that last time they did that, they left Mahomes 13 seconds, and you'd figure 13 seconds is pretty good chance, like 13 seconds is not enough time to score, and yet somehow Kansas City managed to get a field goal with only 13 seconds. That was a few years ago. So yeah, I love the 30-second button. It's great. It's great for fast forwarding commercials. You just bing, 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 you're there.
The only other time you would snap the ball quickly is if you think that the other team is going to challenge and you don't want them to challenge, and then you want to run a play quickly.
I love those.
Yeah. But it was an exciting game. I feel so bad for Buffalo Bills fans, like wide right again, and losing to Kansas City again.
I was cheering for the Chiefs because I don't have any connection to Buffalo, and I kind of like some of the Chiefs players, and I mean, I do respect Mahomes a lot. I think he's awesome to watch. But when the game ended and then they show some of those Buffalo fans basically like in tears or head in their hands and just in shock, it's tough, it's tough to watch. Like, those are the most diehard fans of any team, and they were just like gutted, But I'm going to say this to all the Buffalo fans and to fans of any sports team that's struggling, like, your day will come, like when you do get that moment of winning it all, it's going to just be that much sweeter. And I know it sounds crazy, but like, I'm just thinking of like all those Red Sox fans, in 2004, right? Like, it's 80 years, the curse of the Bambino, all this, all the heartbreaks, all the times that they, they fell short, with ridiculous like situations, Bill Buckner, Bucky Dent, like the list goes on. And even the year before that in 2003, what's his name? The Aaron Boone home run, right? Like when they did win, it was that much better, right? When they did win. So like, I hope that the Bills fans will get their chance to have that feeling, because it's going to be great when they get it,
Before you mentioned the Red Sox, I was going to compare them to the Cubs, because they've also had, now they finally won one, but before they won one, they had so much misery. And it's like, this is the team, the Buffalo Bills, that went to the Super Bowl 4 consecutive years. No one ever does that. And they lost all 4. Like, how does that happen?
It's just crazy. We can do a whole episode of the Buffalo Bills. I have so many theories about, not theories, but thoughts about like those 4 Super Bowls and how the narrative could have changed. Imagine they just would have won that first one with the wide right. Like, that was the one they should have won, and everything. No one would talk about them as this loser franchise, as this curse. It's too bad, because they're such diehards. Gotta feel for those Buffalo fans.
I really do. Okay, well, let's check out the listener mail.
Mailbag.
Listener mail, mostly about our last episode, which was on the TV show The Bear. Got a message from Stephanie from Montreal. I didn't even know this was possible. She left a message in Spotify. Apparently, there's some kind of comment section in Spotify for every one of our episodes that I had no idea about. I got a notification. I checked it out. I'm like, oh, look at this. Basically, what she said about The Bear is she said, loved it. Season 2 was better, where the characters really shined. Richie's character came full circle. I hated him, and then season 2 loved him at the end. And the end and she says, and the end in the freezer, great show.
It's very accurate description, and similar to what we had said about it too.
Derek from Montreal, probably my favorite show of the year. Season 2 was terrific. And let's not forget that classic line of Richie's while he was still an arrogant ass. I'm not like this because I'm Van Halen. I'm Van Halen because I'm like this. Do you remember?
I forgot that line, actually.
Jesse, our good friend from Dallas, Texas, he gives The Bear 4 out of 5 tomato sauce cans.
Oh, that's a good rating. Yes, tomato sauce cans.
Yeah,
I like
so
that.
like I was saying, like we need to like maybe come up with a better thing instead of stars for every episode, and I have a good one for today's Only Murders. I didn't share that with you ahead of time, but and he actually gave season 2 5 out of 5 chocolate covered bananas.
Okay, wow, those are high ratings.
Yes, they are. Mark from Philadelphia. I watched The Bear and also hated the Fishes episode. So we're not alone.
Thank goodness.
Sentiment. Yeah. He loved the way we described Carmy in the freezer and his approach to his team. Seeing similarities in Ted Lasso, the way he impacts his team and he tries to elevate them, right? This is like what we were saying. He gave all his team a chance to shine. Mm-hmm. And he says, as a project manager, I love what you said about Natalie.
She's great. I love Natalie.
Yeah. He loved how she was the one that was able to pull the whole thing off, basically, for them, the unsung hero of the group. And that's listener mail.
Okay, we'll be right back to talk about Only Murders in the Building.
You're listening to Unscripted.
Are you taking a month-long vacation in the stratosphere and you know how hard it is to hold your breath? Are you the cosmic kid in full costume dress? You've got a nice little place in the podcast universe with Set Listing Bruce. Set Listing Bruce is your podcast for all things Bruce Springsteen fandom. We discuss his music, we talk about his tour, and we also talk to fans of other musicians and share their story of their passion, their fandom, and the way that their favorite artist music makes them feel. Set Listing Bruce, a Bruce Springsteen fan podcast, is available wherever you find podcasts. Remember, there is magic in the night.
And now, back to Unscripted.
Okay, Skip, we're back. So we're going to talk about Only Murders in the Building. And we like to mention, first of all, there's going to be a lot of spoilers on this episode. So if you haven't watched season 3, then don't listen to this episode. Only Murders in the Building is available in Canada on Disney Plus and in the United States on Hulu. And I don't know if you're aware of this. You must be, because I know you watch football. Only Murders in the Building is available on regular television in Canada on CTV.
I saw this last week. I was flipping through the channels and I'm like, oh, Only Murders is on TV. Like, what's going on? It's on regular television. And
I don't know how that's possible, because there's a lot of swearing in this show.
there is, but I mean, they can bleep stuff out. They make TV edited versions, I guess. I don't know.
Right. So I'm curious to watch one of the episodes on CTV to see how they handle all the swearing.
You know, the CBS tried to do this, or they did do this with Yellowstone. They
Right.
put it on regular TV, but that's because of like the lack of content because of the writer strike and the actor strike. They are desperate to have stuff. So I'm not sure like what the connection is with CTV putting this on in Canada on the airwaves. I guess they figure it's going to be a hit. I mean,
if it becomes like Big Bang Theory, which I think is like the most watched show in Canada, then it's a winner for CTV.
I guess, yeah. I mean, high praise there for the Big Bang Theory. I don't know.
I'm not saying it's a good
show.
show, but I'm saying like every week I think Big Bang Theory is the highest rated show in Canada, not including live sports.
And they don't even have new episodes. They're only repeats now.
Right, but people still watch it.
It's ridiculous.
So yeah, so it's on CTV. Anyway, we're going to talk about season 3. I'll let you begin.
Sure. So season 3, Only Murders, as you know, like we did a previous episode on season 1 and 2, and we agreed we both liked the show tremendously. Like I thought season 1 was just brilliant, only because of like how different it was. You know, like it was an unexpected. You watch this, you're like, oh my God, Steve Martin, Martin Short, and Selena Gomez. What the hell's this? Right?
Exactly.
And then it's like ties into like podcasts, which we're so passionate about. And there's so much attention to detail about like the podcast world, you know, with the intro music that sounds like Serial, the little logos that appear on the screen, which is like the old Apple Podcasts like screen, like as if you're on an old iPod. Like I just thought there was so much attention to detail. It was just so great. Season 3 leaves off. It starts, I mean, what we're going to do when we do these TV episodes, we're not going to go scene by scene, episode by episode, because if you're listening to this, but if you're listening to this, you've watched it. You don't need us to tell you what happened. We're just going to tell you what we liked and what we didn't like, right? But just as a precursor, you know, like season 2 ended with a murder in the theater. Right? Presumably like something happened in the theater. Mm-hmm. And then I was thinking, well, this is no good. It's supposed to be only murders in the building. That's what Steve Martin says. It's only murders in the building. We're not investigating other murders, only the ones that happen in our building. And then sure enough, when the episode 1 starts, I'm thinking, what the hell? The murder happened in the theater. Well, what's going on? But then you find out he wasn't really dead. And the murder actually did happen again, this time in the building. And that's the murder of the character Ben Glenroy, who's played by Paul Rudd, who has a pretty big part in the season 3, even though he's dead. You know, because there's lots of flashbacks. Yeah.
And I didn't, by the way, we're saying we're going to talk about things we liked and didn't like. I didn't like that he died and then came back to life. Like, what's going on there? Because they pronounced him dead.
It was really stupid, actually.
It was very stupid. I found it was very stupid.
I'm like, what do you mean he's alive? And then literally, like 10 minutes later, oh, he's dead again, you know? Like, okay.
That was a bit annoying to me. So I sort of already was annoyed with season 3, like by episode 2.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to like in season 3. There's a couple of great guest stars. Obviously, Paul Rudd is one of them. And then Meryl Streep, like the greatest actress of our time. And she's on this show, you know, playing.
I know, it was weird to see her in this.
It was a bit weird, but I mean, obviously she's great at everything she does, right? Even can sing and you know.
The storyline for the play that that Martin Short's producing was the dumbest storyline I've ever heard.
Okay, it's interesting because that's the next point I have in my notes. I wrote Death Rattle. That's the name of the play, right? I wrote Death Rattle. Absolutely ridiculous premise. Like, would you pay to go see this show on Broadway? No way.
Only to see how bad it is, maybe, because it makes no sense.
I mean, it's so ridiculous. Like, killer babies? Like what
Yeah,
is this?
makes no sense. But I think they were trying to be as ridiculous as possible.
Part of the brilliance of the show is that how well written it is. And like, not only did the writers have to write a whole show, they actually had to write a whole musical like in the show with songs and dialogue and everything, right? So like, I'm happy that the writers union got what they wanted after their strike, because when you see a show like this and you know how much effort and creativity goes into writing a show, it's something like this, it's really mind-boggling. Like, I don't know how you write a whole ridiculous Broadway play musical called Death Rattle, you know, like that's a whole endeavor to itself. You know, so let's talk about some of the characters. Like, obviously we have the three main characters of the show. We've got Selena Gomez, who plays Mabel Mora, Steve Martin, who plays Charles Hayden Savage, and then Martin Short, Oliver Putnam. I mean, I think season 3 was really Martin Short's season. He shined the most, you know, like he had the focus seemed to be the most on him. I mean, and then at the end, he actually has to perform the musical. Like, he has to step in as the lead actor.
Which is funny because they make you think it's going to be that other guy, Howard.
Yes.
Because Howard's like, I know, you know, you're in a bind. You need an understudy. I'm standing right here. And then they cut to the scene and it's not him.
I know. I thought the same thing as you. But he's so brilliant, Martin Short. Like, he's just hysterical in like, I don't know. Like, I told you, I went to see the Steve Martin and Martin Short like live in concert, like comedy show.
Yeah, I don't know if you told me after. You told me you were going, and I don't know. Yeah. Like, did you like it? Was it good? Like,
yeah, it was really good. It's really good. It's exactly what you think. It's mostly them just making fun of each other, all the same kind of jokes you expect. But Martin Short's a crazy person. Like, he's just nuts. Like, I would love to know, like, in real life, if he's like this, or is this just what he's like when he's on stage? You know, So. I mean, in season 3, Steve Martin is actually understated, which is the way Steve Martin's comedy is, right? That's how he is. He's a straight man. But the highlight of the season was Steve Martin's one part. What, for me, the highlight of the whole season 3 is when Steve Martin performs the song "Which of the Pickwick Triplets Did It?" And he finally performs it in its entirety well, without like screwing up. I mean, that is just incredible. I blew my mind. I'm like, this is hysterical. This is so well done. It's perfect. It was really, like, to me, the highlight of the whole season.
Which of the Pickwick triplets did it? Who of the crew would commit this crime? My little brat, make a mommy go splat. It's a story pretty gory for a nursery rhyme.
And then you have Selena Gomez, who, unfortunately, in season 3, she was so much less prominent, less part of the story, less important, and she didn't have the same kind of charm that she had with the other two characters, like with the other two older characters that she had in season 1 and 2. So I don't know. It was weird. I found Selena was like weird in this season. It didn't fit as well, you know?
I think I even mentioned that to you, you know, a month ago or so when I started watching. She seemed different. And there were a lot of scenes with her where she's not with Martin Short or Steve Martin. Yeah. She's just, you know, with that other new character. I forget his name.
Tobert.
Right, he's a photographer or videographer, right?
Yeah, I love how they make fun of his name, Tobert.
Yeah, I mean, they give him the name and then they make fun of it.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, don't get me wrong. I do love Selena Gomez, but I just thought, like, season 3, it just wasn't the same, you know, and especially with her. Like, that was kind of lacking. I would have liked to see her shine a little bit more, you know? So
I will say in general, like you were saying when this first came out, when season 1, it's a new kind of show. We didn't know what to expect, and all the you know, especially because we do a podcast, and so season 1 was really cool. I found season 2 was less cool, and I found season 3 was even less cool.
I could not agree more. I agree. I 100% agree with you. Season 1 had this cool factor. Season 2 had the feeling of, well, they're doing it again because it was successful. And actually the story was kind of connected a little bit to season 1, right? And then season 3 was not connected to anything other than the last minute of season 2. Like, they, you know, and it just, I'll tell you what I didn't like about season 3, and this is what I've told anybody who's talked to me about this when I talked to some friends about it. Season 1 and 2, the murders that they had to solve and the way the story was told happened a little bit more organically, and it was told in a way that like you were finding things out as things went along. And season 3 tried to just hit you over the head right from the first minute until the first minute of season 3, they're like having the table read for the death rattle, right? So I'm like, oh, well, this is ridiculous. This is just like a classic whodunit. Here's all the suspects, and we put them all in the same room, and we make them all read in the table read. And in that 10-minute scene, you learn like one little thing about each of the characters and why each of them has a motive and what each of them is about. It's like it was just like too obvious, you know. It's like the director telling you, okay, here's all our suspects now, and one of them did it, you know. And they put them in this table read situation to create that overall view for the viewer, which is a dumb. It's catering to the, like, you're assuming that your viewers are not smart enough, where you know that your viewers are smart enough, because in season 1 you told the story in a completely different way, assuming that your viewers were going to get it, you know. So I didn't like that part.
I have 2 questions for you, because it's been a while since I saw that episode. Was the actual murderer at the table read? Because they weren't part of the table read, really. Like, they might have been there in the room.
Correct. The actual murderer is the mother and son, right? That are the producers and the money behind the show. And it's actually the son that did it, right? The mother admits to it because she's trying to cover for her son, but it was the son who said he did it in like a
he pushed him. But the thing is, like, it wasn't intentional, right? It's only because the elevator shaft was broken. If that didn't happen, it just would have pushed him.
So you're right. I don't think they were at the table read, because at that point,
I'm not sure. I don't remember. Like, they might have been there. I just don't remember.
I'm pretty sure they don't, because they make a point of saying that how they have to go and find new sponsors, right? And then there's a part where they have to beg and plead for the mother and son to actually be the producers and the money behind the show. So that apparently they did have someone else at the beginning. You're right. They weren't at the table read. So that maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the producers of the show and the writers were giving us a fake out by saying these are the suspects, but actually it's someone else, right?
So my next question to you was going to be, did you know who the murderer was before they revealed it? Because I didn't.
Well, only right at the very end, like in that last episode.
Okay.
Like when the mother admits to it, I'm like, no, like that's such an obvious thing. It's like she admits to it and she tells them, no, I did it, but let's just see the show so I can enjoy the show before they arrest me. And I'm thinking, there's no way she did it. She's covering for her son. Then it kind of all clicked. I didn't know the circumstances why the son would have done it. By the way, their name is Donna and Cliff, the mother and son. Okay. But it didn't, I don't know why it clicked for me, but it's kind of an obvious thing, you know, one person covering, admitting to it so that the other one doesn't take the blame, you know. I couldn't stand the mother and son, Donna and Cliff, like, oh, it was cringy. I mean, they do it on purpose, right? How she kisses him on the lips and she's so like sexually aggressive on her own kid, and it's just cringe-worthy, their whole relationship. It's terrible. Well, I mean, obviously they do it on purpose, but yeah.
So one thing I really liked, and it's a very small thing, but I loved Matthew Broderick.
Oh, I wrote that down. He was great. He was great.
I think he was only in 1 or 2 episodes. But my favorite scene is where, apparently Steve Martin was up to play Ferris Bueller and didn't get the part because Matthew Broderick got it. And then Martin Short says, don't worry, Matthew Broderick was better than you would have been. Like, he basically shoots down Steve Martin.
But, I mean, the idea that Steve Martin could have played Ferris Bueller is absolutely ridiculous.
Right, because he was too old.
Steve Martin, even when he was 25, he had gray hair. He looked too old, you know? So, like, there's no way. Like, there's just no way.
And then Matthew Broderick, like, he's so into the role. He's, like, asking 100 questions. And then he's driving Martin Short nuts, even though, like, Martin Short was so excited to have him be part of this production. And now he can't wait to get rid of him.
He was really good, Matthew Broderick, and it was unexpected to see him in the show like that, you know?
Yeah, there's a lot of famous people that showed up that you didn't expect to see.
Absolutely. Yeah. The one thing that I really didn't like in the season was the White Room. You know, it's like where Steve Martin kind of blacks out while he's performing because he's screwing up, and then he in his head you see like he's in this white room, like kind of going crazy. It was like hallucinations, and then he comes back and they're like, "You don't remember what you did? You don't remember what you said? You said horrible things." I'm like, I didn't love that, but I think that's more maybe like an inside joke for like if you're in show business. You know what I mean? Like, I wonder if this is a real thing. I don't know.
That's a good point, because I was going to say I didn't like that either. I didn't really, I mean, I understood it, but it's like, you know, what's the point of this? And maybe it is a showbiz thing that we don't know about.
I liked how it ended because so we know that there's going to be season 4 because they've already teased it, and then you can look it up and you can see that it's announced. So what's interesting at the end of season 3 is Saz, Jane Lynch's character, who's played Charles's body double, was Brazos. She comes to celebrate, and then, you know, they make you think that it's Steve Martin that's been shot and killed, but it's not. It's her, because she looks just like him, because she always dresses just like him. So, I mean, I guess we know where season 4 is heading. It's like, who killed Saz, right? So,
which I was wondering before she died, before she got shot, I was wondering, why is she even in that episode? Because really, there was no reason for her to be in that episode. She was only in one previous episode, I think, in that season. And they're like, the storyline didn't require her to be there because they weren't shooting any episodes of Brazos. So I didn't understand why she was even there. And then when she gets shot, I'm like, oh, okay, because they had to have somebody who dies.
I mean, it's an interesting show, right? Because I feel like there's a lot of these little guest stars, right? Like that pop up in the show, and I feel like seeing that Meryl Streep was there, it seems to me it's a kind of show where like people who are friends with like Martin Short and Steve Martin are like, can you get me on your show? You know, like there's all these weird guest stars that just pop up. You know,
it's probably like that. I'm sure that's, you know, you're not far off. So yeah, speaking of like famous people who made guest appearances, Andrea Martin, like they're about to get married, or did they actually get married and then get it annulled? I don't remember.
Well, it's hard to know exactly what happened because he has one of his blackouts and then he wakes up and she's like, "We're engaged." Right?
That was so weird. And then she sort of just disappears from the show, like you don't see her again.
Yeah, I mean, she's a very famous comedian. And I was happy that she got a bigger part in season 3 because, you know, in season 2 they allude to the fact that she's had a crush on him for years when she was doing his makeup on Brazos in the 90s, and so it's good. Like, she plays her role great, and obviously the writers are trying to lead you down the path that's like, maybe she did do it because she's kind of crazy, right? So we do see her craziness come out.
So what did you think about the whole like Loretta is Dickie's mom and Dickie doesn't even know?
I mean, I thought it was like a nice twist, but I mean, I always think about these same things. Like, okay, so there's a mom and she gives her kid up for adoption, and then years later, like, tries to find him. Okay, this happens, right? But then there's 400 million people in the United States? And then somehow the mother and son end up in the same, like, production. Like, they're in the same circles, you know? It's like a little bit too much of like a great coincidence, you know? And I understand, maybe she's tried to find him all these years. And yes, they showed that she followed Ben Gilroy's career and really because she wanted to see Dickie. But it's like, I don't know. It's a little bit too convenient, you know?
I think the only reason she auditioned for this was because she knew that Ben Glenroy was in it, and knew she'd be able to get closer to Dickie.
I thought it was a good part of the plot. I mean, it was central to like everything that kind of happened. You know, Dickie is a really important part of the story. You know, so
another thing I liked actually was when the detective comes to question everybody, and Steve Martin lets her use his dressing room, and then they have to somehow plant a camera in there so that they can record all the interviews, and then they give the footage to Selena Gomez, Mabel, I should say. That was pretty funny, actually. I like that.
There's a lot of good scenes with that detective. You know, when she's in the audience during the rehearsals, and like, she's like actually in tears when Steve Martin finally does his part correctly, and she sees part of the show. Like she's such a Broadway musical fan that she's like a super fan that she's in tears watching a rehearsal of the Death Rattle, the most ridiculous play ever conceived. You know,
I think she actually swears a lot, if I'm not mistaken, and so
she does.
I'm
yes.
curious to see her scenes on the the CTV version of the show.
Who knows? Who knows what will happen?
Okay, so you know how I mentioned earlier that I found each season to be less cool than the previous season. So I'm not even sure if I'm going to watch season 4 when it comes out. I haven't decided yet, although I am curious to know who shot Jane Lynch. Is that her name?
Saz. Yeah.
Sass. So anyway, I guess now's a good time to go to our rating for season 3.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good segue, like to, we'll give our ratings of season 3 and kind of an indication whether you're going to be on board for season 4. Look, I'm invested at this point. I do like the show enough that I'm telling you for sure, yes, I will watch season 4. Kind of even if it's just to see who killed Jane Lynch's character. But like you said, I think we're in agreement. Season 1 was the best. Season 2 was good. And I told you on one of our past episodes, me and my wife started to watch season 3, and we're like 2 episodes in, and I'm like, I don't like this. And she was like, this is not good. Like, this is not a good show. But we stuck with it, and then the longer we stuck with it, it was pretty good. Like, it was entertaining enough. There was a lot of comedy, a lot of great parts. So, like, overall, I give it 3.5 out of 5 death rattles.
Death rattles. Okay, that's great. So I agree with most of the stuff you said, and you had told me after watching episode 2 that you guys didn't like it. I had not started watching it yet, so when I did finally watch it, I was invested and prepared to give it the full 10 episodes. I wasn't going to stop in the middle, and I didn't. But yes, season 1 was the best. Season 2 was next. Season 3. So I think I'm also going to give it 3.5 death rattles.
Very good. Really very nice and good.
We'll be right back after this with some final thoughts.
You're listening to Unscripted.
Do you know John Hyatt songs?
Maybe you know them from being covered by Roseanne Cash, Three Dog Night, the Neville Brothers, Emmylou Harris, Eric Clapton, B.B. King, Jeff Healey, Bonnie Raitt, or literally hundreds of others.
Maybe you have some of his albums on your shelf or in your cow-horned Cadillac right now.
I'm Jesse Jackson.
And I'm Sylvan Brough.
And we're going to dive in from A to Z. Join us on the Perfectly Good podcast.
We're going to discuss all of your favorites and uncover some forgotten gems, from Aces Up Your Sleeve to Zero House.
Rate and debate every John Hyatt song on the Perfectly Good podcast. Have a little faith.
Unscripted with Skip and Josh is available wherever you listen to podcasts. If you listen to the show through Apple Podcasts, please leave a review. To interact with the show, send an email to skipandjoshshow@gmail.com. Follow the show on Twitter and go to Facebook to like the show page. And now, some final thoughts from the guys.
So, Josh, every year we talk about this topic, whether it was in the actual episode when we were doing sports, or sometimes it was in final thoughts, but we always talk about this every single year.
I'm curious to know what you're going to say.
Yeah, did you follow like the inductions into the Baseball Hall of Fame?
I'm glad you brought this up because it's in my list of things to talk about. So
yeah,
I did. I mean, I followed it. I saw on the news the 3 players that were inducted.
Yeah,
and when I saw the names, I'm like, yeah, okay, I guess they all deserve to be in there, whatever. I mean, I wasn't like passionate one way or the other. I wasn't like, oh, these guys definitely deserve to be in there, or they definitely don't deserve to be in there. I'm glad it was only 3 players, because sometimes there's too many players elected in the same year, and it's like watering it down.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I don't think any of those guys had 500 home runs in their career.
No, No.
So, I mean, I'm not sure if that's even like a benchmark that you have to have at least 500 home runs to be in the Hall of Fame.
Because there's too many that don't. I mean,
right, exactly. Yeah. But they were all good players.
Yeah, the days of being passionate about like, oh, this guy deserves it, this guy doesn't deserve it, like that ship has sailed for me like a few years ago. Like, and I don't want to disparage him, but like Harold Baines, like when that happened, I'm like, okay, so they've lowered the bar a little bit, you know?
But he was elected by, it's not called the Veterans Committee, but I call it the Veterans Committee. So ever since they instituted that new thing where these older guys can get in now, it sort of like diminishes it a bit.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're really just comparing numbers, the numbers got lower and lower as they induct people that are closer to those numbers. You know, like, look, it's interesting because Adrian Beltre, I never even thought he was a good player. Like I remember like him in the league, and I'm like, yeah, he's good, whatever. And then at one point he was like maybe on Seattle or Texas, I don't remember what team he's on, and I'm like, man, this guy's a hitter. Like this guy's putting up numbers. And then sure enough, like when they talk about him going into the Hall of Fame this year, and I'm like, oh, 477 home runs. I'm like, okay, well that's something, you know, like that's like definitely something. And then, you know, I mean, Todd Helton is like the kind of player that when you look at his overall career numbers, you're like, of course he deserves it. There's always this Coors Field effect, I think, that goes against Colorado Rockies players. But I mean, I think it's safe to say he's the best player in the history of their franchise. Like, I mean, there's obviously they had a lot of good players, Larry Walker and Andres Galarraga, but like Helton played his whole career on Colorado, right? So there's that. And I think I'm in the minority here, but like, I was shocked that Joe Mauer made it in on the first try. Like I was actually in shock.
I think the reason he made it in is because he's a catcher. You know, like he's a catcher and he had good numbers. His career batting average was over 300. He only had 143 home runs, which is, you know, not a lot. But again,
his home runs and RBI stats are not even Hall of Fame worthy. They are so far away from Hall of Fame worthy. He's miles away. But you know, he was MVP, and he, you know, like I mean, I'm not saying he's not a Hall of Famer, but like the first try to get in so easily, I was just like flabbergasted. Like if I tell you Benito Santiago, you like this guy? You remember him? Good catcher?
Yeah, I do remember him. Yeah.
Yeah. He has more home runs and RBIs and the same amount of Gold Gloves as Joe Mauer. Are you going to tell me Benito Santiago is a Hall of Famer? No. Like, no, you're not. So it is, I'm just like, I think they've really lowered the threshold with Mauer now because other catchers are going to, well, I mean, Buster Posey's in the Hall of Fame for sure now. Maybe he already was, but like he's going to get in for sure now because I think he's better than Mauer, if you ask me. So
again, it's because he's a catcher, but like Mauer did do some very good things. Like I'm reading his stats right now. He did win the batting title 3 times. How many guys do you know win the batting title 3 times in their career, plus a catcher that did it?
Yeah, he's probably the only one. He's
right.
Probably the only
that's
that did
impressive. And he did have over 1,000 runs scored in his career.
I know, but 1,000 runs scored is not enough to be in the Hall of Fame. Like that's not enough, you know. Like the thing with Mauer is his career is short, so he didn't have a chance to. It's shorter than a lot of Hall of Famers, so he didn't have a chance to like collect the stats, you know, add to the stats, you know, but it is what it is. It is what it is. I mean, the other player that they left off was Gary Sheffield.
Right.
And I think
now he's
steroids
done.
Related. Yeah, he's done now. Yeah. I mean, it's steroids related, but I mean, his numbers are certainly Hall of Fame worthy. Like his career numbers are deserving. But I mean, you could say the same thing about Mark McGwire and Barry Bonds. So like, I guess like if we're talking about through the lens of like the writers don't want to vote for a guy who is connected to steroids, I guess there's your reason for Gary Sheffield, right?
I mean, isn't Scott Rowland in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, Gary Sheffield for me is a 10 times better player, 100 times better player than Scott Rowland.
Right,
like,
exactly.
For me, sometimes the Hall of Fame is just like, I don't want to say the eye test, but it's like the instant reaction type of test. Like I followed baseball, especially the era of these players that are getting in right now. And you just mention a name to me and I'll tell you if they're a Hall of Famer or not. And when Scott Rowland got in, I was like, there's no way that guy's a Hall of Famer. And you look at the numbers and then people make the argument. You're like, okay, but like, I mean, if he's in, Sheffield's got to be in, though.
Well, unless
Like, he's gotta be.
unless you think he did performance-enhancing drugs, then no, right?
That way. Unless you think he did performance-enhancing drugs, and unless you think that's still a reason to leave someone off.
Right.
You know, like, yes, I think people have held a grudge long enough. You know, Barry Bonds has 700 career home runs. You're not going to put him in the Hall of Fame. Okay. All right. Well, it was great talking to you about Only Murders season 3. I will look forward to season 4. I'll be positive about it, and I'll speak to you next time.
Okay. Have a great week.